One moment I was Madison Parker, happily engaged. The next, I stood in a room full of predators wearing the masks of loved ones. My fiancé James had targeted me for millions. My ex-husband Maxwell had orchestrated our divorce to use me as bait. Even my future sister-in-law was sleeping with my ex. As the truth crashed down around me, I did something none of them expected. I took control. The storm that trapped us in James's lake house that night wasn't the most dangerous thing we faced. It was me, finally understanding that I'd been playing someone else's game all along, and now I was changing the rules. 3 months later, one of them would be dead, one in prison, and one would wish they'd never met me. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. I stood in front of the full-length mirror, smoothing down the silver silk dress that hugged my curves. My blonde hair fell in loose waves around my shoulders, and I'd spent an extra 20 minutes on my makeup to achieve that perfect, effortless look. Tonight was my engagement party, and everything needed to be perfect. Madison Parker, soon to be Madison Wilson, I whispered to my reflection, testing how it sounded. After 3 years of rebuilding my life post-divorce, I was finally getting my happy ending. The lake house's master bedroom offered a stunning view of the water, and the afternoon sun cast golden ripples across the surface. James had surprised me with this property 6 months ago. "It's an investment," he'd said with that charming smile that made my heart flutter, "and the perfect place to build our future together." My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel, my maid of honor and best friend since college. She was running early and would be here in 15 minutes. Perfect timing. I needed help arranging the photo display in the main hall. I gathered the collection of framed photographs I'd selected for the party. Each one told a piece of our love story. James and me hiking in Colorado, sailing in Maine, that surprise weekend in New Orleans. As I arranged them on the table, a photo I didn't recognize slipped from between 2 frames. I picked it up, frowning. It showed my ex-husband Maxwell at some charity gala, champagne flute in hand, laughing with a woman in a red dress, James's sister, Vivian. The timestamp in the corner read 5 years ago. That was before I'd met either James or Vivian. "That's weird," I muttered, turning the photo over. Nothing written on the back. Just a coincidence, I told myself. New York social circles were small, especially in the financial sector where both men worked. I tucked the photo into my purse to ask James about later. The doorbell chimed, and I hurried downstairs to find Rachel standing on the porch, arms loaded with bags. Her red hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she was already dressed for the party in an emerald cocktail dress. "Let me look at you," she exclaimed, setting down her bags to give me a once-over. "Absolutely gorgeous. James is going to swallow his tongue." I laughed and helped her with the bags. "What's all this?" "Extra decorations, emergency supplies, and..." She pulled out a bottle of expensive champagne. Pre-party courage. We settled in the kitchen, where caterers were already setting up for the evening. Rachel poured us each a glass, then fixed me with a serious look. "So, are you sure about this? About James?" I nearly choked on my champagne. "What kind of question is that hours before my engagement party?" She held up her hands defensively. "I'm your best friend. It's literally my job to ask the hard questions. You've only known James for a year and a half. After what happened with Maxwell, James is nothing like Maxwell," I said firmly, twisting my engagement ring around my finger. The 3-carat diamond caught the light. Maxwell was controlling, manipulative. James respects my independence. He supports my photography business by finding you wealthy clients who all happen to be his friends or business associates. I sighed. "That's called being supportive, Rach. He's proud of my work." I know. It's just, you don't know much about his family. He's always on those mysterious business trips. And I've never seen someone so private about their past." Before I could defend him further, my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "He's not who you think he is. Neither of them are." I deleted it immediately. Probably Maxwell trying to ruin my happiness again. "Everything okay?" Rachel asked, noting my expression. Just spam, I lied, setting down my phone. Let's finish the photo display before the florists arrive. As we worked, I realized something was missing. My engagement ring. I was sure I'd placed it on the vanity while I showered, but now it wasn't there. Panic rose in my chest as I searched the bedroom. I can't find my ring, I told Rachel, my voice tight with anxiety. I just had it. Breathe, Maddie. Let's retrace your steps. My hands trembled as memories flooded back. Maxwell standing over me, his voice cold. You're always losing things, Madison. Is it carelessness, or are you doing this to upset me? To get attention? Rachel's voice pulled me back to the present. Maddie, you're hyperventilating. Sorry, I gasped. Just bad memories. We tore apart the bedroom looking for the ring, but it was nowhere to be found. I was about to call James when we heard cars pulling up outside. That's James and Vivian, I said, peering through the window. They're early. Go greet them, Rachel urged. I'll keep looking. I hurried downstairs, composing myself. James stepped through the door first, tall, sandy-haired, with that movie star smile that still made my stomach flutter. He wrapped me in a warm embrace, smelling of expensive cologne. There's my beautiful fiancé, he murmured, kissing me, softly. His sister Vivian followed, looking stunning as always in a deep blue dress that complemented her blonde hair and fair complexion. I'd always thought she looked more like James's twin than his younger sister, with the same blue eyes and straight nose. But something seemed off today. She wouldn't meet my gaze directly, and her hands trembled when she handed me a beautifully wrapped package. A little engagement gift, she said, her voice unnaturally bright. Open it later. James guided me toward the kitchen to check on the catering, but I paused when I heard hushed voices from the study. Vivian and James were having what sounded like an argument. She doesn't need to know, James was saying firmly. Everything's in place, just stick to the plan. They fell silent when they noticed me in the doorway. James recovered quickly, smiling as if nothing was wrong. Just going over some family business, honey. Nothing for you to worry about. I nodded, unsettled but unwilling to cause a scene before our guests arrived. As I helped the caterer arrange the last of the hors d'oeuvres, he mentioned something that made my blood run cold. We also handled Mr. Blackwood's promotion party last month. Your ex-husband was asking about you. I nearly dropped the tray I was holding. Maxwell asked about me? The caterer nodded. Small world, isn't it? When Mr. Wilson mentioned your name for this event, I recognized it immediately. I excused myself, feeling dizzy. How did Maxwell know the same caterer as James? New York was big, but apparently not big enough. Back upstairs, I found Rachel triumphantly holding my engagement ring. Found it in your jewelry box, she said. In the second drawer, not the top one where you usually keep it? That's impossible, I said, taking it from her. I already checked there. Rachel shrugged. Well, it's there now. When I told James about the missing ring later, he chuckled. You probably misplaced it, babe. You've been stressed with all the planning. The casual dismissal felt eerily familiar, reminding me again of Maxwell. I pushed the thought away, The first guests began to arrive. A delivery man appeared with an arrangement of white lilies. The card read, Congratulations on your engagement. Again, hope it lasts longer this time. It was unsigned, but white lilies were Maxwell's signature gift throughout our marriage. I shoved the card into my clutch next to the mysterious photo. Something wasn't right. But I had no time to dwell on it as the house began filling with guests. James's colleagues, my clients, our shared friends. Tonight was supposed to be about our future. Why did my past keep intruding? By 8 o'clock, the party was in full swing. Champagne flowed freely, the caterers circulated with trays of elegant appetizers, and the string quartet played softly in the background. I moved through the crowd with practiced ease, playing the role of the glowing bride-to-be while trying to ignore the sense of unease gnawing at my insides. James's parents arrived fashionably late. Harold Wilson was an imposing figure with silver hair and the same piercing blue eyes as his son. His wife Patricia was a slender, elegant woman who seemed to assess everything and everyone with a calculating gaze. Madison, darling. Patricia air-kissed both my cheeks. That dress is certainly youthful. Thank you for hosting us, Mrs. Wilson, I replied with the sweet smile I'd perfected during my marriage to Maxwell. James and I are so happy you could make it. She hummed, taking a glass of champagne from a passing tray. You're nothing like James's usual type, you know. Before I could respond to that backhanded comment, James appeared at my side, steering his mother toward some friends. He shot me an apologetic look over his shoulder. I retreated to the bar where I found Vivian downing what appeared to be her third or fourth martini. Her eyes kept darting to a tall man in a gray suit who was watching us both with undisguised interest. Who's that? I asked, nodding subtly toward him. Vivian's hand trembled as she set down her glass. No one important. Just an associate of James's. He keeps looking at us. Ignore him, she said sharply. Then, softening her tone. Sorry, It's been a stressful week. Before I could press further, Derek Martin, James's best friend and business partner, approached. With his dark hair and dimpled smile, he'd always reminded me of a young George Clooney. He pulled me aside, his expression uncharacteristically serious. Madison, there's something you should know about James and the company. He's been there. You are! James's voice boomed as he appeared beside us. Derek, I believe Ms. Thornton was looking for you. Something about that Houston property? Derek's smile didn't reach his eyes. Of course, we'll catch up later, Madison. As he walked away, I turned to James. What was that about? Nothing important, James assured me, guiding me toward a group of guests. Just business. My sister Olivia arrived an hour late, looking flustered. Her husband Todd followed, carrying their coats. Sorry we're late, she whispered, hugging me tightly. The babysitter canceled at the last minute. As I introduced her to some of James's colleagues, I noticed her expression change. Maddie, she said quietly, why are there people from Maxwell's firm here? I followed her gaze to a group of men in the corner. What are you talking about? Those are James's associates. That's Martin Weber and Richard Daniels. They both worked directly under Maxwell at Blackwood Financial. I met them at your wedding. A chill ran down my spine. That must be a coincidence? Olivia didn't look convinced, but before she could say more, the room suddenly hushed. I turned to see what had captured everyone's attention. Maxwell Blackwood stood in the entrance hall, looking exactly as he had the day of our divorce proceedings. Impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, dark hair perfectly styled with that confident smile that had once made me feel like the most special woman in the world. Before I understood what that smile hid, he moved through the crowd with practiced charm, accepting a glass of champagne and nodding to familiar faces. Too many familiar faces for my comfort. Then he spotted me and made a direct path to where I stood frozen in place. Madison, he said, his voice warm as if we were old friends rather than bitter exes. You look radiant, as always. I forced my face into a neutral expression. Maxwell, I don't recall sending you an invitation. He laughed, as if I'd said something delightful. I'm hurt. I came to give my blessing, of course. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. But we need to talk privately. It's urgent, regarding your fiancé. James appeared at my side, his arm sliding possessively around my waist. Blackwood, this is a surprise. I expected tension, perhaps even confrontation. Instead, I was struck by the strange undercurrent between them, a forced civility that felt rehearsed, as if they were both acting for the benefit of onlookers. Wilson, Maxwell nodded. Congratulations, you found yourself quite a woman. I'm well aware, James replied coolly. I extricated myself from James's grip. If you'll excuse me, I need to check on something in the kitchen. The kitchen was blessedly empty except for a few staff members. I leaned against the counter, breathing deeply, trying to process Maxwell's unexpected appearance. When I heard the door open, I expected James, but instead found Vivian, her face flushed from drinking. She didn't notice me at first, too busy frantically scrolling through her phone and deleting messages. Everything okay? I asked. She startled, nearly dropping her phone. God, Madison, you scared me. Sorry. What are you doing? Nothing. Just work stress. You know how it is. She tucked her phone away. Shouldn't you be out there with the guests? I needed a minute. Maxwell showing up threw me. Something flickered across her face. Guilt? Fear? Of course. That must be difficult. Before I could question her further, Rachel burst into the kitchen, grabbed my arm, and dragged me toward the guest bathroom. What the hell, Rach? She locked the door behind us. I was looking for your lipstick in your purse and I found this. She held up the photo of Maxwell and Vivian. What's going on, Maddie? I don't know. I found it with the engagement photos. It's from 5 years ago. That's not all. She hesitated. I think James has been lying to you. About a lot of things. My stomach nodded. What are you talking about? He has a second phone. A burner. I saw him using it earlier when he thought no one was watching. And last week, when I was helping at your studio, I overheard him making calls to Blackwood Financial. Multiple calls, Maddie. I shook my head. You're wrong. You must have misheard. Why would I make this up? I'm worried about you. Or you're jealous, I snapped, instantly regretting the words. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. It's just, it doesn't make sense. James wouldn't what? Lie to you? Like Maxwell did? You're so desperate for this to be your fairy tale ending that you're ignoring the red flags? I grabbed my purse from her. You're supposed to be supporting me tonight. I'm trying. To protect you. I unlocked the door. I don't need protection. I need my best friend to be happy for me. I stalked back to the party, fixing my smile in place as I rejoined the guests. The room had grown warmer, louder, the faces around me blurring as I tried to make sense of everything Rachel had told me. Across the room, I spotted Maxwell charming James's parents. They were laughing together, looking far too comfortable for people who supposedly had never met. As I watched, Patricia Wilson touched Maxwell's arm familiarly and said something that made him laugh. The plan is proceeding as discussed, I heard her say. Harold and I are quite satisfied with the... Maxwell caught sight of me watching and smoothly changed the subject, turning Patricia's attention to the views of the lake through the windows. What plan? And why did James's parents seem to know my ex-husband? James appeared at my side, offering me a fresh glass of champagne. Everything okay, babe? You look pale. I accepted the glass. Just surprised to see Maxwell here, and that your parents seem to know him. Oh, that? James laughed lightly. Small world. Turns out Dad and Maxwell have crossed paths at various charity events over the years. Financial circles in New York are incestuous that way. The explanation seemed reasonable, but something in James's too casual tone set off alarm bells. Or maybe Rachel's suspicions were getting to me. A sharp clink of glass cut through the noise of the party. Maxwell stood in the center of the room, tapping his champagne flute with a spoon. If I could have everyone's attention, he called, his voice carrying with the practiced ease of someone accustomed to commanding room. I'd like to make a toast to the happy couple, the crowd quoted, all eyes turning to Maxwell. James tensed beside me. I've known Madison for many years. Maxwell began, his eyes finding mine. We've been through a lot together. Some good times. He paused meaningfully. And some revelations that were less pleasant. My heart hammered in my chest. What was he doing? When I heard about her engagement to James Wilson, I was, quite frankly, surprised. Not because Madison doesn't deserve happiness. She absolutely does. His smile turned sharp. But because I know something about James that Madison might want to hear before she commits to spending her life with him. Across the room, I saw Vivian turn deathly pale, her martini glass frozen halfway to her lips. You see, there's been a secret affair going on for some time now. An affair that Madison knows nothing about, between two people very close to her. The room went dead silent. I felt the blood drain from my face. An affair between... I moved before I could think, crossing the room in swift strides. I took a champagne flute from a nearby tray and approached Maxwell with a calm I didn't feel. All eyes were on us as I handed him the fresh glass and leaned close to his ear. I already know, I whispered, loud enough for only him to hear. The look of shock on his face was almost worth the sick feeling in my stomach. I'd taken a gamble based on nothing but instinct and the strange behaviors I'd witnessed all evening. But Maxwell's reaction and Vivian's visible distress across the room confirmed what I'd only suspected moments ago. Maxwell was having an affair with my fiancé's sister, and tonight's ambush was meant to destroy my engagement party with that revelation. What I didn't understand was why, or how James fit into all of this, or why I suddenly felt like a pawn in a game whose rules I didn't understand. But I'd learned one thing from my marriage to Maxwell: never let them see you break. The room remained frozen in stunned silence. Maxwell's expression shifted from shocked to calculating in an instant, those familiar dark eyes studying my face. I'd seen that look countless times during our marriage. Maxwell recalibrating, searching for a new angle of attack. "You know," he repeated quietly, his voice tinged with disbelief. I maintained eye contact, channeling every ounce of confidence I could muster. The truth was, I'd only pieced it together seconds ago, based on their reactions and the pieces that had been falling into place all evening. But Maxwell didn't need to know that. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? I kept my voice low, intimate, as if we were sharing confidences rather than standing in the center of my shattered engagement party. Behind me, I sensed, rather than saw, James approaching. The crowd around us murmured with confusion and anticipation. This wasn't the entertainment they'd expected tonight. "Madison," James placed his hand on my shoulder. "What's going on?" I turned to face him, searching his expression for any hint of knowledge, complicity, guilt. His blue eyes revealed nothing but practiced concern. "Why don't we ask your sister?" I suggested, turning to where Vivian stood trembling near the fireplace, her empty martini glass clutched like a lifeline. The crowd parted as all eyes shifted to Vivian. Her face crumpled under the collective scrutiny. Without warning, she burst into tears, mascara streaking down her pale cheeks. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "Madison, I'm so sorry. It just happened. We never meant—" "Vivian, don't," Maxwell cut in sharply too late. The affair was confirmed in front of 50 witnesses. I felt an odd sense of detachment, as if watching the scene unfold from somewhere above the room. My fiancé's sister and my ex-husband. It would be almost funny if it weren't happening to me. "How long?" I asked, my voice steady despite the hurricane of emotions brewing inside. Vivian looked to Maxwell, who remained stonily silent. 6 months, she finally admitted. "But Madison, it's not what this is really about. You're missing the bigger picture." Those words sent a chill through me. What? Bigger picture? What was I missing? I glanced at James, expecting anger, shock, betrayal on behalf of his fiancée. Instead, his expression showed irritation, as if Vivian's confession was merely an inconvenient disruption to his carefully orchestrated event. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion privately," James suggested, his voice tight. "Our guests didn't come here for drama." "No, they came for champagne and canapés while celebrating our engagement," I replied. "An engagement you pursued while your sister was sleeping with my ex-husband. Did you know, James?" A flicker of something, annoyance, impatience, crossed his face. "Madison, you're upset. Let's not do this here." Guests began shifting uncomfortably, some whispering behind hands, others edging toward the exit. Patricia Wilson stepped forward, her social training kicking in. "Perhaps we should give the couple some privacy. The caterers have prepared a lovely dessert service on the terrace." As she herded people toward the doors, I noticed a man in a gray suit, the same one who'd been watching Vivian earlier, remaining firmly in place. He approached me with measured steps, his expression serious. "Ms. Parker," he said quietly, extending his hand. "Nathan Walker, I need to speak with you." "Privately." "This isn't a good time," James interjected, stepping between us. The man discreetly opened his jacket, revealing a badge clipped to his belt. "Detective Walker, Financial Crimes Division. This conversation can't wait, Mr. Wilson." My stomach dropped. "Financial crimes? What was happening? What's this about?" I asked. "The Archer investment case?" he replied, watching James's face carefully. "Among other things," James's expression hardened. My fiancé has nothing to do with my business dealings, and we're in the middle of a personal situation. I'm afraid they're connected, Walker stated flatly. More than you realize, Ms. Parker. Maxwell approached, his composure regained. Madison, the affair was a mistake, but it's just a small part of what you need to know. James has been— That's enough, James cut in, his voice sharp with authority. Detective, my attorney will be happy to schedule a meeting at a more appropriate time. Madison, I think we should ask our guest to leave. I felt the situation spiraling beyond my control. The affair revelation was just the tip of the iceberg, it seemed. What had I stumbled into? As guests reluctantly filed out, offering awkward congratulations or avoiding eye contact entirely, I caught sight of a strange object nestled among the floral centerpiece on the main table. It looked like a small black lens. Moving closer under the pretense of adjusting a flower, I confirmed my suspicion. A miniature camera, expertly hidden among the blooms. Someone had been recording the entire confrontation. My sister Olivia grabbed my arm as she and Todd prepared to leave. Maddie, we need to talk. Now. I let her pull me into the small study off the main hall. Todd stood guard at the door. Remember that warning that circulated last year in the financial district? About the con artist targeting wealthy divorcees? Olivia asked, her expression grave. Vaguely, I frowned. Some guy was seducing recently divorced women to access their settlements. But what does that— I recognized James tonight, from the security footage First National shared with partner banks. Madison, I think your fiancé is that con artist. Shook my head. That's impossible. James owns Wilson Investments. He's established, respected. Have you ever been to his office? Met his employees? Seen any proof of this supposed empire beyond the fancy car and expensive gifts? I opened my mouth to respond, then closed it again. The truth was, I hadn't. James always met me at restaurants or my place. His business trips were frequent, but vague. Whenever I asked about his work, he smoothly changed the subject. I need to check something, I mumbled, moving past her toward James's home office. The door was locked. Of course. But I knew where James kept the spare key, taped beneath the hallway console table. My hands trembled as I unlocked the door. The office appeared normal at first glance. Modern desk, sleek computer, tasteful art. I went straight to the wall safe behind the Rothko print. James had used my birthday as the combination, a gesture I'd once found romantic. Now it felt calculated, an easy number for him to remember while playing on my sentimentality. The safe swung open to reveal stacks of documents. I pulled them out, scanning quickly, my heart sinking with each page. Shell companies, offshore accounts, transaction records showing large sums moving through various entities before landing in numbered accounts. And there, in a folder labeled Operations, detailed profiles of women. Wealthy women, recently divorced women, with photos, financial information, psychological assessments, including mine. My legs gave out, and I sank to the floor, clutching the evidence of James's deception. Everything had been a lie. The chance meeting at the gallery opening, his passionate interest in my photography, the whirlwind romance, all carefully orchestrated steps in a sophisticated con. The door opened and I looked up, expecting James. Instead, Rachel stood there, her expression grim. Madison, I have to tell you something, she began. I've been working with Detective Walker for months. My sister Kelly was one of his victims last year. She took her own life when she discovered the truth and realized she'd lost everything. His victims, James's victims. My voice sounded distant, hollow. Rachel nodded, kneeling beside me. That's how I recognized the pattern when you started dating him. I tried to warn you, but you were so happy, so convinced he was different from Maxwell. I couldn't prove anything, so I contacted Walker instead. The betrayal cut deep, even though I understood her reasons. You've been investigating my fiancé behind my back? To protect you, and to stop him from hurting anyone else. She glanced at the documents spread around me. I see you found his records. It's all here, the entire operation, including a dossier on me. I held up the file with my name on it. He's been planning this for over 2 years, Rachel. since before my divorce was even finalized. A memory surfaced, Maxwell becoming increasingly paranoid toward the end of our marriage, accusing me of having affairs, of plotting against him. At the time, I'd attributed it to his controlling nature. Now I wondered if James had been manipulating us both from the shadows, setting the stage for his con long before he made his entrance. I struggled to my feet, the folder clutched in my hand. I need to find James. Madison, wait. It's not safe. He's dangerous when cornered. But I was already moving, anger replacing shock. In the main hall, I found the party all but deserted, just a few lingering guests and staff cleaning up. No sign of James, Maxwell, or Vivian. Detective Walker approached, his expression concerned. Ms. Parker, I need to speak with you about James Wilson and Maxwell Blackwood. They're running a scam together, aren't they? I asked bluntly, holding up the folder. Some kind of investment fraud targeting divorced women. Walker's eyebrows rose. Yes and no. The situation is more complicated than a simple partnership. They're actually rivals, competing predators in the same hunting ground, and you're caught in the middle of their game. Before he could explain further, a loud crash of thunder shook the house, and the lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely. The lake house was plunged into darkness, broken only by occasional flashes of lightning through the windows. The storm that had been threatening all evening had finally arrived. In the brief illumination from a lightning strike, I saw something that made my blood run cold. James standing in the doorway, his expression murderous, eyes fixed on the file in my hands. And beside him, Maxwell, wearing an identical look of cold calculation. The darkness wrapped around us like a shroud, broken only by the sporadic blue-white flashes of lightning. In those staccato glimpses, I watched James and Maxwell enter the room, moving with predatory grace. Detective Walker shifted, positioning himself slightly in front of me. Power's out across the whole area, James announced casually. Generator should kick in shortly. As if on cue, emergency lights flickered on, casting the room in an eerie, dim glow. The storm howled outside, rain lashing against the windows, transforming the picturesque lake view into something menacing. Madison has found your files, Wilson, Walker said, his hand drifting toward his jacket. It's over, James laughed, the sound both familiar and suddenly alien. Is it? Madison, darling, what exactly do you think you've discovered? I held up the folder. Everything. The shell companies, the offshore accounts, your targeting of divorced women. Me. My voice cracked on the last word. And you believe this, detective's interpretation? James's eyes narrowed. Did you check his credentials, really look at that badge? Doubt crept in. I glanced at Walker, who remained steady. Ms. Parker, don't let him manipulate you, Walker said firmly. James Wilson isn't even his real name. He's been operating under various identities for years, running investment scams targeting vulnerable women with substantial assets. That's rich coming from you, Maxwell interjected, moving further into the room. Madison, this man isn't a detective. He's Gregory Sanders, a con man working for Horizon Capital, one of James's competitors. They're trying to destroy his legitimate business by framing him. My head spun with competing narratives. Who was telling the truth? James, my fiancé who had apparently been investigating me for 2 years before we accidentally met? Maxwell, my manipulative ex-husband who was sleeping with my fiancé's sister? Or Walker or Sanders or whoever he was, claiming to be investigating them both? A noise from the hallway drew our attention. Vivian stood there, mascara streaked down her face, clutching her phone. The roads are flooded, she announced shakily. No one's leaving tonight. Perfect, James muttered. Just perfect. Rachel emerged from the hallway behind Vivian, followed by James's business partner, Derek. The group of us stared at each other in the dim emergency lighting, the storm raging outside, predators and prey, though I wasn't sure who was which anymore. Well, James said, breaking the tense silence, since we're all trapped here for the night, why don't we clear the air? Madison clearly has questions. Starting with who the hell you really are, I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. James sighed, running a hand through his hair. I'm exactly who I've always said I am. James Wilson, investment manager. My business is entirely legitimate, though perhaps creatively structured for tax purposes. He gestured toward Walker. This man works for a rival firm that's been trying to steal my clients for years. That's not true, Walker countered. James Wilson died 20 years ago in Seattle. This man stole his identity and has been using it as the base for his operations. Since 2018? Before that, he was Michael Reynolds, then Andrew Portman. Prove it, I challenged Walker. I can, Derek spoke up unexpectedly. I've been gathering evidence against him for months. James's expression hardened. Derek, I thought we were friends. We were, until I found out what you did to Catherine. Who's Catherine? I asked. My sister, Derek answered, eyes fixed on James. Your fourth victim. She lost everything. Her house, her savings, her self-respect. She's still rebuilding her life. Another lightning flash illuminated the room, highlighting the tableau we created. 7 people trapped by the storm, each with their own agenda, their own version of the truth. I turned to Maxwell, who had been uncharacteristically quiet. And where do you fit into all this? Maxwell's smile was cold. Originally, I was investigating James. His firm kept poaching clients from Blackwood Financial with returns that were too good to be true. I suspected fraud. He glanced at Vivian. Getting close to his sister was a tactical decision that became complicated. By actual feelings? I asked skeptically. Believe what you want, Maxwell replied. But when I discovered you were his new target, I had to intervene. How noble, James sneered. The truth is, Blackwood has been running his own version of my supposed scam for years. He's jealous of my success and worried I'll expose him. Why do you think your divorce settlement was so generous, Madison? He was hiding money before you could find it. The accusation hit home. My settlement had been surprisingly substantial, given Maxwell's vicious approach to the divorce. I'd attributed it to my lawyer's skill and Maxwell's desire to finalize things quickly. Had he really been concealing larger assets? Enough, Walker cut in. Ms. Parker, both these men are manipulating you. We have files on both their operations. James targeted you specifically because of your connection to Maxwell. Your meeting at the gallery was orchestrated. He'd been studying you for months. I remembered that night clearly, bumping into James by the abstract expressionist exhibit, spilling my champagne on his jacket, his charming laugh as he insisted it was his fault. Had it all been staged? My entire relationship a carefully scripted performance? I need proof, I said, not accusations. Check his office, Walker suggested. The real evidence won't be in that safe. That's just what he wanted you to find. Look for a hidden compartment in the bookshelf, behind the financial law volumes. James tensed visibly. Bingo. This is ridiculous, he blustered. Madison, you're not seriously listening to this imposter? But I was already moving toward the office, the others following. Once there, I went directly to the bookshelf Walker had indicated. Sure enough, behind a row of impressive leather-bound law books was a small button. When pressed, a hidden panel slid open, revealing a laptop and external hard drive. That's private property, James protested, lunging forward only to be blocked by Walker. I powered up the laptop. It required a password. Try Archer 4569, Derek suggested quietly. The screen unlocked, revealing dozens of folders labeled with women's names. I found mine and clicked it open, my hands shaking. Inside was my entire life. Financial records, psychological profile, detailed notes on my marriage to Maxwell, surveillance photos of me going about my daily routine. Photos from before I'd ever met James. Notes about which art I preferred, what wines I enjoyed, my favorite flowers. All the little details that had made me believe James and I were soulmates. Most disturbing were the recorded calls between James and someone he called the Scout, discussing how to approach me, what vulnerabilities to exploit, how to ensure I fell deeply enough to grant him access to my finances. You've been planning this for years, I whispered, looking up at James with horror. Everything was a lie. Not everything, he insisted, his charm evaporating as his scheme unraveled. The attraction was real, Madison. You weren't like the others. Save it, I spat. How many women before me? How many lives have you destroyed? He's worked through at least 12 that we know of, Walker stated. Possibly more. And what about you? I turned to Maxwell. Were you running the same scam? Is that what our marriage was? Maxwell's expression darkened. Our marriage was real, Madison. Flawed, certainly, but real. My investigation into Wilson began after our divorce. Vivian stepped forward. That's not entirely true, Max. She turned to me. He's been tracking James for years, since before your marriage ended. A new horrifying possibility dawned on me. Did you orchestrate our divorce? I asked Maxwell. To set me up as bait for James? No, Maxwell denied, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes that made me doubt him. Oh God, I breathed. You did. You drove me away on purpose. All those fights, the gaslighting, the controlling behavior that escalated out of nowhere. In our last year together, you were pushing me to leave. It wasn't like that, Maxwell insisted, but his protest lacked conviction. Actually, James interrupted, it was exactly like that. Maxwell has been trying to catch me for years. But here's the twist, Madison. He's not trying to protect women from me. He's eliminating competition. His own operation is more sophisticated, but essentially the same concept. My head was spinning. Had I been nothing but a pawn to both of them? A piece in some twisted game between rival predators? I can prove it, James continued. Check the hidden compartment in his watch. Maxwell instinctively covered his wrist, confirming James's claim before denying it. This is absurd, Walker stepped forward. Hand over the watch, Blackwood. After a tense moment, Maxwell reluctantly removed his watch and handed it over. Walker examined it, found the hidden catch, and extracted a tiny memory card. Standard field operational technique, Walker noted. Recording device? Maxwell's silence was answer enough. Derek took the memory card and inserted it into the laptop. The files that appeared showed detailed records of Maxwell's own operation, different methods but the same endgame as James. I sank into the desk chair, overwhelmed. So both of you are con men. Both of you targeted me, for years. I never took a penny from you, Maxwell pointed out. No, you just emotionally tortured me, destroyed my self-confidence, and manipulated me into a divorce that apparently served your larger agenda. I replied bitterly. James smirked at Maxwell. At least I made her happy while setting up my con. The nearby casual cruelty of that statement hit me like a physical blow. Before I could respond, Rachel stepped forward. There's more, she said quietly. Madison, I should have told you sooner, but I was afraid you wouldn't believe me. She pulled out her phone. This is one of James's previous fiancés, Elizabeth Grant. She showed me a photograph of a smiling blonde woman who bore a striking resemblance to me. Same hair color, similar features, same style of dress. And this is Carolyn Miller, she continued, swiping to another photo of another blonde. And Diane Summers. Another swipe, another blonde who could have been my sister. All three are missing. A heavy silence fell over the room, broken only by the howling wind and pounding rain outside. What happened to them? I managed to ask, though I feared I already knew the answer. That's what we've been trying to determine, Walker said grimly. Their assets were liquidated, their identities effectively erased, and they haven't been seen since. I looked at James with new horror. Not just a con man, but possibly something far worse. His expression remained impassive. This is all very entertaining, James finally said, but it's just another con. These women aren't missing. They're living comfortably abroad under new identities after helping me with certain financial transactions. They're fine. Then why can't they be contacted? Walker challenged. Why did Elizabeth's mother receive a suicide note, but no body was ever found? James shrugged. People who want to disappear sometimes leave false trails. A flash of lightning illuminated the room again, followed immediately by a deafening crack of thunder. The lights flickered, emergency power failing, then stabilized at an even dimmer level. We should move to the main room, James suggested coolly. If the generator fails completely, the fireplace will provide light and heat. As we filed out of the office, the tension was palpable. I walked as far from both James and Maxwell as possible, positioning myself near Walker and Rachel, the only people I still somewhat trusted. In the main room, Derek and Walker moved furniture to create a rough circle around the fireplace where embers still glowed from earlier in the evening. James added logs from the basket, building up the fire until it cast dancing shadows across all our faces. "So what now?" Vivian asked, her voice small. "We're trapped here until morning at least." "Now we get to the truth," I said firmly. "No more lies, no more manipulation." I turned to Walker. "You first. Prove you're really a detective." Walker produced his badge and ID again, along with a business card with the department's contact information. "Call and verify when the phones are working again. In the meantime, my warrant for Wilson's arrest should be convincing." He handed me an official-looking document. "Easily faked," James dismissed. "Maybe," I agreed. "But Maxwell's watch and your hidden files aren't so easily explained away." Derek stepped forward. "I can confirm Walker's identity. I've been working with him for months, gathering evidence against James." James laughed bitterly. "Et tu, Derek? After everything I've done for you?" "You mean like killing my sister?" Derek shot back, his voice shaking with emotion. The accusation landed like a bomb in the room. Even James seemed momentarily stunned. "I never harmed Catherine," he insisted. "She was alive when I left her." "But broken," Derek countered. "Broken enough to take her own life rather than face what you'd done to her." I studied James's face in the firelight, searching for any sign of remorse, any hint of the man I thought I'd known and loved. There was nothing familiar there anymore. "What was the endgame with me?" I asked him directly. "Marriage? Clean out my accounts on the honeymoon? Make me disappear?" James met my gaze steadily. "The plan was simple. Marriage, joint accounts, a tragic accident during our Mediterranean cruise. Nothing painful, you'd have simply vanished overboard one night. I'm not a monster, Madison." The casualness with which he described my planned murder sent ice through my veins. "And you?" I turned to Maxwell. "What was your real agenda?" Maxwell at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Initially, professional rivalry with Wilson. Then, concern when I realized he was targeting you." "Bullshit," James coughed. "It's true that I manipulated certain aspects of our marriage toward the end," Maxwell admitted. "I needed you to be independent, financially secure, and eventually single to attract Wilson's attention, but I never intended for you to be harmed." "How generous," I replied acidly. "You only emotionally abused me as part of an elaborate sting operation." "I was trying to protect you," Maxwell insisted, "by driving me straight into the arms of a man you knew was dangerous." I shook my head, in disgust. "You're both despicable." Vivian spoke up for the first time in a while. "Not everyone was playing you, Madison. The affair was real. It wasn't part of some master plan." She looked at Maxwell with genuine emotion. "At least not on my side." Maxwell had the grace to look away. "It became complicated." "Spare me," I said. The fire crackled in the silence that followed, shadows dancing across our faces like the truth shifting between us. Elusive, constantly changing shape, impossible to pin down completely. "I found something else," Rachel said, quietly, breaking the tense silence. She handed me her phone. In the basement, a hidden room. The photos on her phone showed a sophisticated surveillance setup, multiple screens displaying camera feeds of various locations. With a shock, I recognized my apartment, my photography studio, even my sister's house. "He's been watching all of us," Rachel continued, "for months." I looked up at James, finally seeing him clearly. Not the charming, supportive man I'd fallen for, but a predator who had studied his prey meticulously before moving in for the kill. "You were never going to let me leave this house alive, were you?" I asked quietly. James's smile in the firelight was chilling. "Now, why would you think that, darling?" The storm outside seemed to respond to the tension in the room, a particularly violent gust of wind rattling the windows. I jumped as something heavy thudded against the front door. Walker moved toward the sound, hand inside his jacket where I presumed he kept his weapon. Before he could reach the door, a deafening crack split the air, a gunshot. I ducked instinctively as chaos erupted in the dimly lit room. Someone screamed. Vivian, I thought, and I heard the sound of breaking glass. When I looked up, James was gone, and Rachel was on the floor, blood spreading across her emerald dress. "Rachel!" I screamed, rushing to my friend's side. Blood soaked through her dress at the shoulder, her face contorted in pain. "Someone help me." Detective Walker was already kneeling beside us, ripping off his jacket to press against the wound. "It's a through and through," he assessed grimly. "Missed anything vital from the looks of it, but she's losing blood." My hands trembled as I helped apply pressure. Rachel's eyes fluttered open, focusing on me with effort. "Madison," she whispered. "Phone. Recording." I didn't understand, but there was no time to ask questions. The room had erupted into chaos. Derek had rushed to the broken window where James had apparently escaped. Vivian was sobbing in the corner. Maxwell stood frozen, staring at the blood spreading across the hardwood floor. "We need medical supplies," Walker barked. "First aid kit, clean towels, anything." "Bathroom cabinet upstairs," I said. "And there's a medical kit in the kitchen." Maxwell snapped out of his stupor. "I'll get them." As he left the room, I noticed something peculiar, despite the apparent panic. He moved with purpose, his eyes scanning the room systematically. Something about his behavior triggered my intuition. After years of marriage to a manipulative man, I'd developed a sixth sense for deception. I leaned close to Rachel, pretending to comfort her while whispering, "Where's your phone? What did you record?" "Jacket, pocket," she managed. "Started when gunshot." Understanding dawned. She'd activated a recording app when the chaos began, capturing everything said in the aftermath. Smart. With Walker focused on treating her wound, I slipped my hand into Rachel's jacket pocket and retrieved her phone. The recording was still running. I tucked it into my own pocket just as Maxwell returned with the medical supplies. "Here," he handed the first aid kit to Walker. "How bad is it?" "Not fatal if we can stop the bleeding," Walker replied. "But she needs a hospital. Any chance of getting help here?" Derek returned from checking the broken window. "Roads are flooded, phone lines are down, and cell service is non-existent in this storm. We're on our own until morning at least." "Where's James?" I asked, scanning the room. "Gone," Derek replied. "Looks like he jumped through the window and took off toward the boathouse." "In this storm?" Vivian looked incredulous. "He'll drown." "He knows this property better than any of us," I reminded her. "And he's desperate." Walker finished bandaging Rachel's shoulder. "We need to move her somewhere comfortable and keep her warm. Shock is the biggest danger now." Together, we carefully lifted Rachel onto the sofa nearest the fireplace. I covered her with a throw blanket, watching the color slowly returning to her face. The bleeding had slowed, but she looked so fragile. "Stay with us, Rach," I murmured, squeezing her hand. With Rachel stabilized for the moment, I took stock of our situation. James was gone, but could return at any time, possibly armed and certainly dangerous. We were trapped by the storm with no communication to the outside world, and I was still surrounded by people I couldn't fully trust. I needed to take control. "Okay," I said, standing up. "We need to secure this place. Board up that window, check all doors and other entry points. And we need to find that gun." When are you in charge?" Maxwell challenged. I fixed him with a cold stare. "Since I discovered that my fiancé and my ex-husband have both been playing me for years. Since my best friend took a bullet. Since I realized I'm the only person here, with nothing left to hide." Something shifted in Maxwell's expression. Surprise, perhaps even respect. "Madison's right," Walker agreed. "We need to secure the premises. Mr. Blackwood, you and Mr. Martin should check all doors and windows. Ms. Wilson, please stay with Ms. Winters." He turned to me. "Ms. Parker, I'd like you to help me look for the weapon." "Perfect." A chance to speak privately with the only person who might be truly on my side. As the others moved to their assigned tasks, Walker and I began searching the room methodically, looking for the discarded gun. I don't trust any of them, I whispered, once we were out of earshot. Including you, Walker nodded. Smart. But regardless of what you believe about me, James Wilson is a dangerous man. He wouldn't have fled unless he had an exit strategy. Or a way back in, I suggested. This is his house. He knows every inch of it. Exactly. Walker's voice was grim. Which is why we need to be prepared. I pulled Rachel's phone from my pocket. She started recording when the shot was fired. Might be useful. Walker nodded approvingly. Keep that safe. Now, I need to know, is there anything else in this house that could help us? Files, evidence, anything that might give us leverage? I thought for a moment. The surveillance room in the basement that Rachel found. It might have recordings of everything that's happened tonight. Show me. We slipped away while the others were occupied, making our way to the basement door off the kitchen. It was locked. Stand back, Walker warned, then delivered a powerful kick that splintered the frame. The stairs descended into darkness. I fumbled for the light switch, but nothing happened. Power's out to this section, Walker noted. Got your phone? I activated my flashlight app, illuminating a normal-looking basement. Storage boxes, a wine rack, tools hanging on the wall. Nothing suspicious. Rachel said there was a hidden door, I murmured, scanning the walls. Walker ran his hands along the concrete, searching for seams or inconsistencies. Here, he finally said, locating a nearly invisible outline in the wall. But how does it open? I examined the area, noticing a slight discoloration on one of the storage shelves nearby. Pressing it revealed a small keypad. We need a code, I said. Walker stepped back, considering. People use meaningful numbers for their security systems. Birthdays, anniversaries. My birthday, I realized. He used it for the office safe. I entered the month and day of my birth. Nothing happened. I tried adding the year. Still nothing. When did you first meet? Walker suggested. I entered the date of our accidental encounter at the gallery. The panel slid open with a soft hiss. Bastard, I muttered, both disturbed and vindicated to find more evidence of James's careful planning. The hidden room was exactly as Rachel had described. A sophisticated command center with multiple monitors, recording equipment, and a high-end computer system running on what appeared to be a separate power supply. The screens showed various rooms of the lake house, my apartment, my studio, and other locations I didn't recognize. He's been watching me everywhere, I whispered, a chill running down my spine. Walker immediately went to the computer. We need to find any recordings from tonight. They might show who fired the shot. I scanned the equipment, locating what appeared to be the main control panel. Thankfully, the interface was fairly intuitive. I found the file directory for today's date and began scrolling through video feeds. Here, I said, pulling up the footage from the main room. This is from right before the shot was fired. We watched the scene unfold, our tense conversation by the fireplace, the thud at the door, and then, freeze it, Walker instructed. There. I paused the video at his command. In the grainy footage, a figure was visible at the broken window, arm extended. The angle wasn't ideal, but the build was unmistakable. That's not James, I said slowly. That's Derek. Walker frowned. Why would Derek? A noise from the stairwell cut him off. We both turned to see Maxwell standing there, his expression unreadable. Found something interesting? He asked casually. Walker straightened. Mr. Martin appears to be the shooter, not Wilson, as we assumed. I'm not surprised, Maxwell replied, stepping into the room. Derek and James have a complicated relationship. More rivals than partners despite appearances. I studied Maxwell, trying to read his true intentions. What do you want, Maxwell? To help you, he said simply. Despite what you think of me, Madison, I never wanted you hurt. Just manipulated, I shot back. He had the decency to look uncomfortable. I made mistakes, but right now, we have bigger problems. James has a contingency plan for everything. If he's fled, it's because he's implementing his exit strategy. Which is? Walker pressed. Maxwell's expression darkened. In his other operations, when things went wrong, there was often a fire. insurance fraud to cover his tracks, destroy evidence, and sometimes eliminate witnesses. The implication was clear. You think he's planning to burn down the house? With us inside? The thought sent ice through my veins. It's his pattern, Maxwell confirmed, and with the storm, emergency services would be delayed. By the time help arrived, we need to get everyone out of here, Walker said urgently. Now. We rushed back upstairs to find Derek and Vivian in the kitchen. Rachel was still on the sofa in the main room, conscious but weak. We have to leave, I announced. James may be planning to burn down the house. That's ridiculous, Vivian protested. My brother wouldn't. We saw the surveillance footage. I cut her off. Derek fired the shot, not James. So either you're both in on this together, or James has played everyone, including his sister. Derek blanched. I didn't save it, Walker interrupted. We have it on video. The question now is whether you're working with James or have your own agenda. Before Derek could respond, a smell reached my nostrils. Smoke, faint but unmistakable. He's already started it, Maxwell said grimly. We rushed to the windows. Through the rain-lashed darkness, an orange glow was visible from the direction of the boathouse. That's not the house, I realized. It's the boathouse. He's destroying his escape route so we can't follow. Or creating a diversion, Walker suggested. The smell of smoke intensified. Derek ran to the back of the house, returning moments later with panic in his eyes. Kitchen fire, spreading fast. Walker took charge. Everyone out the front door, now. Mr. Martin, help me with Ms. Winters. As they lifted Rachel from the sofa, I grabbed my purse and the laptop from James's office, the evidence we'd need if we survived this night. Maxwell collected our coats from the hall closet, while Vivian stood frozen in disbelief. Vivian, come on! I grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the door. Outside, the storm raged with unrelenting fury. Rain lashed our faces, wind threatening to knock us off our feet. The front garden offered little shelter, and the road to freedom was submerged under several feet of rising water. Behind us, flames licked at the kitchen windows, spreading with alarming speed. James had planned well, multiple ignition points, accelerants in strategic locations. The beautiful lake house was now a death trap. The boat, Maxwell shouted over the wind. If James didn't take it, it's our only way out. It's too dangerous. Walker objected, supporting Rachel's weight. The storm. We'll die here otherwise, I countered. The boathouse is on fire, but the dock extends past it. The boat might still be accessible. We had no choice. Our small group fought through the tempest, making our way along the muddy path toward the dock. The burning boathouse illuminated our way, flames reaching skyward despite the downpour. I led the way, my photographer's eye accustomed to navigating in variable light conditions. The dock was slick with rain, boards creaking ominously beneath our feet. Beyond the flaming boathouse, miracle of miracles, James's sleek motorboat remained tethered at the end of the dock. He didn't take it, I said incredulously. Because he had another way out, Maxwell suggested. A second boat, perhaps, or a vehicle hidden nearby. We boarded quickly, Walker and Derek carefully settling Rachel under the boat's canopy. Maxwell went straight for the controls. You know how to drive this thing? I asked skeptically. I have a similar model, he replied, not looking up as he worked to start the engine. Though navigating this storm won't be easy. The motor sputtered to life just as a massive section of the burning boathouse collapsed into the water beside us. Sparks and burning debris rained down, forcing us to shield our faces. Hold on! Maxwell shouted, gunning the engine. The boat lurched forward into the churning lake. Behind us, flames had now engulfed half the lake house, an inferno that even the torrential rain couldn't extinguish. Whatever accelerant James had used, it was disturbingly effective. As we gained distance, I took stock of our bedraggled group. Rachel lay semi-conscious under Derek's coat. Vivian huddled miserably at the bow, still in shock. Walker stood vigilant at the stern, watching for signs of pursuit. Derek sat apart from everyone, avoided eye contact. And Maxwell navigated with surprising skill, his face set in concentration as he guided us through the treacherous waters. Where are we going? I shouted over the roar of the engine and storm. There's a marina on the north shore, Maxwell called back. About 2 miles. If we can reach it, we can find help. I made my way carefully to where Derek sat. Why did you shoot Rachel? I demanded. He looked up, rain streaming down his face. I wasn't aiming for her. I was trying to hit James. He had a gun. When he saw me, he ducked and ran. My shot went wild. Why should I believe you? Because if I wanted to hurt any of you, I could have done it a dozen times tonight, he replied bitterly. All I wanted was justice for my sister. Before I could respond, the boat's engine suddenly sputtered and died. No, 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 Maxwell muttered, frantically working the controls. He tampered with it. There's barely any fuel. The realization hit us all at once. James had planned for this contingency too. He'd left the boat as a trap, knowing we'd try to escape that way, knowing we'd get stranded in the middle of the lake during the worst storm in years. Can we row to shore? Walker asked. Maxwell shook his head. In this weather, the current would push us miles south before we reached land, and the water temperature is near freezing. We were drifting now, at the mercy of the storm. The burning house receded in the distance as winds pushed us further into the vast darkness of the lake. Look! Vivian suddenly cried, pointing across the water. Lights! Through the curtain of rain, the faint glow of what appeared to be another boat was visible, perhaps half a mile away. Help! Over here! Derek began shouting, waving his arms frantically. Wait, I cautioned, a sick feeling growing in my stomach. It could be James. Walker pulled out a small flashlight from his pocket and began signaling in what I recognized as Morse code. 3 short flashes, 3 long, 3 short, SOS. The distant lights changed course, heading in our direction. Is that wise? I asked Walker quietly. If it's James, then we'll deal with him, Walker replied grimly. But right now, with Ms. Winters injured and no shelter, exposure is our biggest threat. We need help, regardless of who's offering it. I checked on Rachel, whose condition was deteriorating. Her skin felt clammy, her breathing shallow. The makeshift bandage was soaked through, with blood or rain, I couldn't tell in the darkness. Hang on, Rach, I whispered. Help is coming. As the approaching boat drew nearer, I steeled myself for whatever came next. If it was James, this night would end in a final confrontation. If it was rescue, we still had a long way to go before. We were truly safe. Either way, I was done being a victim, done being manipulated. Maxwell had taught me how to recognize manipulation. James had taught me how to present a convincing facade. Now I would use those lessons against them both. The approaching vessel cut its engine, drifting to within 20 feet of us. A powerful spotlight swept over our boat, temporarily blinding us. Anyone hurt? A gruff voice called out. Woman with a gunshot wound, Walker shouted back. Need immediate medical attention. The spotlight lowered slightly. Toss a line, we'll tow you in. Maxwell grabbed the mooring rope, preparing to throw it across the gap between boats. But something made me grab his arm. Wait, I whispered. That voice. Too late. The spotlight shifted, illuminating the man at the helm of the rescue boat. James Wilson smiled back at us, a shotgun resting casually across his lap. Having boat trouble? He called pleasantly. What a stroke of luck that I happened by. The rain continued to lash down around us as our boats bobbed in the churning water, facing each other in a tense standoff. James's smile remained fixed, but I could see the dangerous glint in his eyes even through the darkness and downpour. Quite. The dramatic exit, James, I called, my voice steadier than I felt. Arson seems a bit extreme even for you. Insurance will cover it, he replied with chilling nonchalance. And it would have solved so many problems if you'd all stayed inside. Now I have to improvise. He gestured with the shotgun. Throw the line. Let's not prolong this unpleasant situation. Maxwell hesitated, the rope in his hands. Walker subtly shifted position, placing himself between James and Rachel's vulnerable form. And if we refuse? Maxwell challenged. James shrugged. Then you drift until you capsize or freeze. The storm's not letting up for hours. Water temperature is about 38 degrees. Hypothermia will set in within minutes of immersion. Your call. I stepped forward, my mind racing. What's your endgame here, James? You can't kill all of us and explain it away as an accident? Can't I? His smile widened. Tragic boating accident during the worst storm in decades. 5 bodies. Recovered days later after the flooded lake recedes. By then, evidence of gunshot wounds will be ambiguous at best. 5? Derek counted. There are 6 of us. James's gaze shifted to his sister. Vivian will be coming with me, of course. Vivian shrank back. James, this is insane. These are people, not obstacles. Please, just stop this. For the first time, James's composure cracked. Slightly. It's too late for that, Viv. It's been too late since Maxwell involved you in his schemes. You're blaming me? Maxwell scoffed. You're the one who's been systematically targeting women, draining their accounts, and making them disappear. Business, James said dismissively. Nothing personal, until you made it personal by using my sister. The currents were gradually pushing our boats apart. Soon we'd be out of conversation range, left to drift helplessly in the storm while James circled back to pick us off at his leisure. I needed a plan. Looking around our small vessel, I took inventory of our assets. Walker presumably had a gun, though he'd been remarkably reluctant to draw it. Maxwell's knowledge of the lake might be useful if we could get the engine running again. Derek was an unknown factor, dangerous or ally, and Rachel needed medical attention soon. Then there was the evidence. Rachel's phone in my pocket, still recording, and James's laptop clutched against my chest under my coat. If nothing else, I needed to ensure those survived, even if we didn't. A plan began forming in my mind, risky, but better than passive surrender. I moved closer to Walker. Still have your weapon? I whispered. He nodded almost imperceptibly. When I create a distraction, get ready to use it, I murmured, then raised my voice. James, let's be reasonable. You don't need to hurt anyone else. I have access to offshore accounts with over $3 million. The codes are on my phone. Help us to shore safely, and it's yours. James cocked his head, momentarily intrigued. Always the negotiator, Madison. It's what I admired about you. I'm serious, I insisted, slowly reaching into my pocket. I can transfer it right now as a show of good faith. Madison, don't, Maxwell warned, playing along perfectly without even realizing it. Stay out of this, Maxwell, I snapped. I'm trying to save our lives. James was watching intently as I pulled out Rachel's phone. Slowly, he cautioned, raising the shotgun. I held up the phone, making a show of navigating to a banking app. In reality, I was stopping the recording and switching to the camera function. See? I held the screen toward him. I just need to enter the authorization code. I positioned my finger over the camera flash, then pressed the button repeatedly. The bright strobe effect in the darkness had exactly the impact I'd hoped for. James flinched, momentarily blinded, raising his hand to shield his eyes. In that instant, Walker drew his weapon and fired. The shot went wide as our boat rocked. In the choppy waters, but it was enough to send James diving for cover. Get down! Walker shouted as James returned fire, the shotgun blast splintering wood at the bow of our boat. Water began pouring in through the damaged hull. We were sinking. Everyone to the back of the boat, Maxwell ordered, trying to keep the bow raised. James was preparing for another shot when a massive wave hit his boat, nearly capsizing it. He grabbed the wheel to stabilize, giving us precious seconds. We need to swim for shore, Walker decided. It's our only chance. Rachel can't swim in her condition, I objected. I've got her, Derek volunteered. I was a lifeguard for 6 years. Another shotgun blast peppered the water near our boat. James had regained control and was maneuvering for a better angle. No choice, Walker said grimly. On 3, everyone over the side away from Wilson's boat. Head southwest toward that cluster of lights. It's maybe half a mile. Half a mile in frigid water during a storm, with a gunman pursuing us. The odds were not in our favor. 1, 2, 3. We plunged into the lake. The cold hit like a physical blow, driving the air from my lungs. I broke the surface gasping, the rain still pounding down, making it nearly impossible to see more than a few feet. Derek had Rachel in a rescue hold, swimming with powerful strokes toward where we hoped the shore would be. Walker was providing covering fire, forcing James to keep his distance. Maxwell and Vivian were already several yards ahead. I struck out after them, the laptop and phone creating drag, weighing me down. Part of me knew I should abandon them to save myself. But they were the only evidence that might bring James to justice if I survived. Behind us, I heard the roar of an engine as James circled around, searching for us in the darkness. The spotlight swept across the water, barely visible through the sheets of rain. The cold was already seeping into my muscles, making each stroke more difficult than the last. My waterlogged clothes pulled me down, and my fingers were growing numb. Half a mile suddenly seemed impossible. "Madison!" Maxwell had circled back, treading water beside me. "You're falling behind. Give me the laptop." I hesitated, not trusting him. "For God's sake, Madison, now isn't the time. You're going to drown." Reluctantly, I handed over the laptop. Unburdened, I found swimming marginally easier, though the cold continued to sap my strength. The spotlight found us, pinning us in its harsh glare. James's boat accelerated, bearing down on our position. "Dive!" Maxwell shouted. We plunged beneath the surface as the boat roared overhead. When I came up for air, I could no longer see Maxwell or the others. The storm and darkness had separated us. Panic threatened to overwhelm me. I was alone in a freezing lake, hunted by a killer, with no idea which direction led to shore. The logical part of my brain knew that panic would only hasten my demise, but logic was rapidly giving way to primal fear. Then, through the curtain of rain, I glimpsed something. The faint glow of lights to my right. With renewed determination, I swam toward them. Minutes stretched like hours as I fought the current, my limbs growing heavier with each stroke. Twice I went under, swallowing lake water before fighting my way back to the surface. My thoughts grew sluggish, a dangerous sign of advancing hypothermia. Just as my strength was failing, my foot struck something solid, the lake bottom. I was in shallower water. With the last of my energy, I dragged myself toward shore, eventually collapsing on a narrow, rocky beach. For several minutes, I could only lie there, coughing up water, shivering violently. The rain continued to fall, but I'd never been so grateful to feel solid ground beneath me. Once I'd recovered enough strength to sit up, I took stock of my surroundings. I'd washed up near what appeared to be a small cluster of vacation cabins, dark and presumably unoccupied given the off-season and storm. The nearest one was about 50 yards up a slight incline. Shelter. Warmth. Those were my immediate priorities. I staggered to my feet, my waterlogged clothes weighing me down, and began the arduous journey toward the cabin. Every step was an effort, my body demanding rest while my survival instinct drove me forward. The cabin door was locked, as expected. I searched the perimeter, eventually finding a window with a broken latch that yielded to persistent pressure. I climbed inside, collapsing onto the floor of what appeared to be a rustic living room. My first priority was getting out of my wet clothes. I stripped down, wrapping myself in a dusty throw blanket I found on a nearby couch. The cabin had no electricity, but there was a fireplace with a small stack of logs beside it. My numb fingers fumbled with matches from a box on the mantel, but eventually I managed to start a small blaze. As warmth slowly returned to my body, so did clarity to my thoughts. I had no idea if the others had made it to shore, no way to call for help, and a murderous con man still hunting me. But I was alive, and as long as I remained so, I had a chance. I searched the cabin, finding some canned food in the kitchen and, more importantly, a landline phone. I lifted the receiver, praying for a dial tone, and was rewarded with silence. The storm had taken out these lines too. A battery-powered radio yielded only static, though I left it on, hoping emergency broadcasts might break through. I found dry clothes in a bedroom, men's flannel and jeans, far too large but better than nothing. As I changed, I heard a noise outside, footsteps on the porch. I froze, listening intently. It could be one of my group, having found the same. Sure. Or it could be James. I looked around frantically for a weapon, settling on a heavy cast-iron poker from the fireplace. Positioning myself beside the door, I waited, heart pounding. The door handle turned slowly, testing. Finding it locked, whoever was outside moved to the window I'd entered through. I heard the scrape of the frame being pushed up. A figure climbed through, silhouetted against the faint light from outside. Too slight to be James or Walker or Derek. As they straightened, I recognized the outline. Vivian? She whirled around, startled. Madison! Oh, thank God! I kept the poker raised. Where are the others? I don't know, she admitted, shivering violently. We got separated in the water. I saw light from this cabin and managed to make it to shore. I hesitated, not fully trusting her, but her condition was clearly genuine. She was as drenched and hypothermic as I had been. Get out of those wet clothes, I instructed, lowering the poker. There are men's clothes in the bedroom. Not a great fit, but they're dry. While she changed, I kept watch at the window, scanning the shoreline for any sign of the others, or of James. The storm showed no sign of abating, rain lashing against the windows, wind howling through the trees. Vivian returned, swimming in, an oversized flannel shirt and rolled-up jeans, and huddled by the fire. For a while, neither of us spoke, processing the night's events. I had no idea, she finally said, her voice small, about James, what he was doing to those women, to you. Did you know about the affair with Maxwell? I asked bluntly. She nodded miserably. It started as a way to get information. Maxwell was investigating James's business practices. He approached me at a charity function, charming, attentive. I knew he was your ex-husband, but he explained that he was trying to protect other women from some scheme James was running. And you believed him? Maxwell can be convincing. And I'd started having my own concerns about James. The secretive phone calls, unexplained absences, the way some of his special clients seemed to vanish. She hugged her knees to her chest. The affair became real, or at least it did for me, but not for Maxwell, I surmised. I don't know, she admitted. Sometimes I thought, but then tonight, seeing him with you, I realized I was just another pawn. I couldn't muster much sympathy. Welcome to the club. A sudden pounding at the door made us both jump. Madison? Vivian? Are you in there? Maxwell's voice. I approached cautiously. How do I know it's really you? For God's sake, Madison, open the door. I'm freezing out here. Answer a question first, I demanded. What was the name of our first dog? A pause. We never had a dog. You were allergic. We had a fish named Albert that you insisted on having. A funeral for when it died 3 weeks after we got it? That was true. I unlocked the door. Maxwell stumbled in, soaking wet and carrying the laptop I'd given him, wrapped in his jacket in a futile attempt to keep it dry. You kept it, I said, surprised. Evidence, he replied simply, setting the soggy bundle down carefully. Though I doubt it survived the swim. He looked from me to Vivian. Just the two of you? I nodded. No sign of the others. You? I thought I saw Derek and Rachel make it to shore further north, but I lost sight of them in the storm. Maxwell reported. No sign of Walker or James. So what now? Vivian asked. We're stranded, no phone, no transportation. We wait out the storm, I decided. First light, we try to reach the main road, find help. And if James finds us first? Maxwell asked. I picked up the fireplace poker again. Then we're ready for him. As if on cue, a figure appeared in the window. James, his face illuminated briefly by a flash of lightning, water streaming down his features, expression twisted with rage. Then he was gone, vanishing into the darkness. He's toying with us, Maxwell said grimly. No, I realized. He's cutting off our escape routes, making sure we're trapped before he makes his move. The three of us looked at each other, united momentarily by shared danger. Outside, the storm continued to rage, providing the perfect cover for James's hunt. Inside our fragile shelter, we prepared for the final confrontation. He'll come through the front door, Maxwell predicted, moving a heavy cabinet to barricade the entrance. It's the most direct approach. No, I countered, thinking of everything I'd learned about James over our time together. He'll want the element of surprise, the window in the back bedroom or the kitchen door. Vivian huddled by the fire, her face pale with fear. Does it matter? We're trapped either way. She was right. The cabin offered minimal protection against a determined killer with a shotgun. Our only weapons were a fireplace poker, a kitchen knife I'd found in a drawer, and Maxwell's quick thinking, a resource I was still reluctant to trust. "We need a plan," I insisted, peering through the curtains at the storm-lashed darkness outside. No sign of James, but I could feel his presence, circling, watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "The back door," Maxwell suggested. "If we can slip out while he's focused on the front?" A sudden crash from the kitchen cut him off. Glass shattered as something came hurtling through the window. I ducked instinctively, expecting gunfire. Instead, a small metal object clattered across the floor, hissing ominously. "Smoke bomb!" Maxwell shouted, lunging to throw it back out the broken window. Too late. Thick, acrid smoke billowed through the cabin, burning my eyes and throat. Through watering eyes, I saw Vivian collapse to her knees, coughing violently. "Cover." "Your mouth," I choked out, pulling my borrowed shirt up over my nose. "Stay low and head for the front door." Maxwell was already at Vivian's side, helping her up. "The barricade, no choice." I gestured at the rapidly filling room. "We'll suffocate if we stay." Together, we struggled to move the heavy cabinet blocking our exit. The smoke was disorienting, making it difficult to see or breathe. My lungs burned with each gasping breath. Finally, the door was clear. I yanked it open, gulping the rain-soaked air outside. Maxwell half-carried Vivian across the threshold, her coughing so severe she could barely stand. We staggered onto the porch, the driving rain a blessed relief after the caustic smoke. For a moment, I thought we'd made it. Then a figure stepped from the shadows at the edge of the porch, shotgun leveled at our chests. "Going somewhere?" James asked pleasantly. My heart sank. We'd played right into his hands, driven from our shelter exactly as he'd planned. "James, please," Vivian pleaded between coughs. "This has gone too far." "Too far?" His laugh was hollow. "We passed too far when Detective Walker started building his case. When you betrayed me with him." He jerked his head toward Maxwell. "When my own sister chose strangers over family." "This isn't about family loyalty," I said, trying to keep him talking while I desperately searched for options. "It's about the women you've hurt, killed." James's expression hardened. "Business casualties, nothing personal." "It was personal to them," I countered. "To Elizabeth Grant, Carolyn Miller, Diane Summers. To me." "You were different," he insisted, something almost like genuine emotion flickering across his face. "The others were just targets. I actually started to care." "How touching," Maxwell muttered. James shifted the shotgun toward him. "You don't get to judge me, Blackwood. You're no better. The only difference is I'm honest about what I am." "And what's that?" I asked, taking a small step to the side, drawing his attention back to me. "A survivor," James stated simply. "This world devours the weak. I refused to be devoured." He gestured with the gun. "Now, all of you move down the steps toward the lake." "Why not just shoot us here?" Maxwell challenged. "Bodies found with shotgun wounds raise questions," James explained with terrifying practicality. "Bodies found drowned after a storm do not. Now move." We descended the porch steps, the rain pelting us mercilessly. My mind raced, seeking any advantage, any opportunity. The darkness was both curse and blessing, limiting visibility but offering potential cover. As we neared the shoreline, I heard Vivian whimper. James was herding us toward the water, where he would execute us one by one, letting the lake claim our bodies. The perfect cover for his crimes. "James, think about what you're doing." I tried one last appeal. "You can't kill all of us and get away with it. Walker knows about your operation. The FBI probably does too by now." "A risk I'll have to manage," he replied coldly. "I've disappeared before. I can do it again." We reached the rocky shore, waves crashing just feet away. This was it. Our last moments. A flicker of movement caught my eye. Something in the water, approaching silently from our left. James, focused on his prisoners, hadn't noticed. "Any last words?" he asked, aiming the shotgun at Maxwell first. "Just one," I replied, meeting James's gaze directly. "Duck." A look of confusion crossed his face. a split second of hesitation that saved our lives. From the water, a figure lunged, tackling James from behind. The shotgun discharged harmlessly into the air as both men went down in a tangle of limbs. "Detective Walker, run!" he shouted, grappling with James in the mud. Maxwell grabbed Vivian's arm and bolted toward the trees. I hesitated, unwilling to abandon Walker. The two men fought viciously, each landing brutal blows. James was younger, stronger, but Walker had the desperation of a man with nothing to lose. They rolled dangerously close to the water's edge, neither able to gain a decisive advantage. I looked around frantically for a weapon, anything to help turn the tide. The shotgun had fallen several feet away. I lunged for it, fingers closing around the cold metal barrel. Before I could bring it to bear, James landed a devastating punch that sent Walker sprawling. He turned, seeing me with the weapon, and charged. Fired. The recoil knocked me back, the sound deafening even against the storm. James staggered, clutching his shoulder where the shot had hit him. Blood seeped between his fingers, black in the darkness. "Madison," he gasped, his handsome face twisted with pain and rage. I chambered another round, keeping the shotgun trained on him. "It's over, James." He laughed, a chilling sound devoid of humor. "It's never over. You think this changes anything? There will always be predators and prey in this world. Always." "Maybe," I acknowledged, "but tonight you're not the predator anymore." Walker had recovered, producing a pair of handcuffs from his sodden jacket. "James Wilson, you're under arrest for fraud, attempted murder, and suspicion of multiple homicides." James's eyes never left mine as Walker secured the cuffs. "You and I aren't so different, Madison," he said quietly. "That's why we worked so well together. You're a survivor, too. You do what's necessary." I lowered the shotgun, suddenly exhausted. "The difference is I don't destroy lives to save my own." A shout from the direction of the cabin drew our attention. Maxwell was waving frantically from the porch. "Headlights on the main road," he called. "Someone's coming!" Walker secured James to a porch support while we waited. Within minutes, 2 sheriff's department vehicles pulled up, responding to emergency calls about the fire at the lake house. As officers took custody of James, I finally allowed myself to believe we might actually survive this night. "Where are Rachel and Derek?" I asked Walker as paramedics examined his injuries. "Safe," he assured me. "They made it to a house about half a mile north. The owners called emergency services. Rachel's already been transported to the hospital." Relief washed over me. "How did you find us?" "Followed Wilson," Walker explained grimly. "Had to swim most of the way after he took out our boat, but I wasn't letting him finish what he started." Maxwell approached cautiously, keeping a respectful distance from the officers processing the scene. "The laptop? Did it survive?" Walker nodded. "Waterlogged, but the hard drive should be salvageable. Between that and Rachel's recording, we have enough to put Wilson away for a long time. You too, potentially." Maxwell's expression remained impassive. "I imagine we could work something out. Immunity in exchange for testimony?" "That's for the prosecutor to decide," Walker replied. As dawn broke, casting pale light over the devastation, I sat wrapped in an emergency blanket, watching officers lead James to a patrol car. His gaze found mine one last time, a mixture of hatred and something almost like respect in his eyes. I turned away, facing the rising sun instead. Whatever happened next, James Wilson would no longer be part of my story. The paramedics insisted on taking me to the hospital to be treated for hypothermia and shock. As the ambulance pulled away from the cabin, I caught a glimpse of Maxwell talking intently with Walker, likely negotiating the terms of his cooperation. Some predators survived by adapting, I realized. Maxwell would land on his feet as he always did. The question was, what would I do now? With my engagement exposed as a sham, my business potentially compromised by its connection to James's laundering operation, and my trust more shattered than ever, where could I possibly go from here? For the first time in hours, I allowed myself to close my eyes, surrendering to exhaustion. Tomorrow's problems would wait for tomorrow. For now, I had survived. Sometimes that was enough. 6 months later, I stood at the back of the courtroom, watching as James Wilson, now using his real name David Mercer, was led away in handcuffs. The jury had deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts: multiple fraud charges, money laundering, attempted murder, and 3 counts of first-degree murder for the missing women who had been found buried on properties connected to his various aliases. "You okay?" Rachel asked quietly beside me. Her left arm remained in a brace, the shoulder never quite healing properly after the gunshot, but she was alive and had proven to be my rock throughout the grueling investigation and trial. "I'm fine," I assured her. "Just processing." The past 6 months had been a journey through bureaucratic and legal hell. Endless interviews with FBI agents, forensic accountants combing through my finances to determine if I'd been complicit in James's schemes, the humiliating media coverage that painted me as either a victim or a fool, depending on the outlet. Through it all, I'd slowly rebuilt my life from the ashes of James's deception. My photography business had survived barely after I'd been cleared of any involvement in the money laundering. I'd had to start nearly from scratch, my reputation tainted by association, but authentic talent eventually spoke for itself. A series of stark black and white photographs documenting the aftermath of trauma had garnered critical attention and led to a small gallery showing. "Ms. Parker?" I turned to find Detective Walker, now officially FBI Special Agent Walker, approaching through the dispersing crowd. "Thought you might want to know," he said, his expression somber. "We found dental records matching Heather Simmons in the excavation of the Vermont property. That brings the confirmed victim count to 4. I nodded, absorbing the grim news. Heather had been James's fiancé 3 years before me. Her family had never believed the suicide note. "What about Maxwell?" I asked. Walker's mouth tightened. "Mr. Blackwood continues to be a cooperative witness. His testimony was crucial in securing today's conviction." Translation: Maxwell had successfully negotiated immunity in exchange for helping build the case against James. A predator adapting to changing circumstances, just as I'd predicted. "He's been asking to speak with you," Walker added reluctantly. "Not interested," I replied firmly. Rachel squeezed my hand supportively. We left the courthouse together, emerging into the bright spring sunshine that felt at odds with the darkness of the proceedings we'd just witnessed. Over lunch at a quiet cafe, Rachel updated me on her own progress. "The support group is growing," she said, stirring her tea. 3 new members last week, women who survived similar scams, though thankfully none as violent as James's operation. After recovering from her injury, Rachel had channeled her experience into founding a support network for victims of romantic fraud. Her background in finance made her particularly effective at helping women rebuild their shattered credit and reclaim their financial independence. "You should come to a meeting," she suggested, not for the first time. "Your perspective would be valuable." "Maybe someday," I hedged. I'm still working through my own stuff. Truth was, I wasn't ready to identify as a victim, not publicly. My weekly therapy sessions were challenging enough without adding group vulnerability to the mix. "Any word from Vivian?" Rachel asked, changing the subject. "Christmas card," I replied. "She's in California. Fresh start." Vivian had cooperated fully with the investigation, eventually receiving immunity in exchange for testimony about her limited knowledge of James's operations. Unlike Maxwell, she'd seemed genuinely remorseful about her unwitting role in his schemes. The affair with Maxwell had died a natural death once his usefulness to the prosecution was established. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "News says guilty on all counts." "Dinner tonight to celebrate?" "Todd's making his famous lasagna." I smiled, typing back a quick acceptance. My sister had been my safe harbor throughout the ordeal, offering her guest room when I'd been forced to sell my apartment to cover legal fees, watching over me during the darkest days of depression that followed the revelations. "So what's next for Madison Parker?" Rachel asked as we finished our meal. Now that this chapter is finally closed, I considered the question. "I'm looking at studio space in Brooklyn. Rent's cheaper than Manhattan, and I could use a change of scenery." What I didn't mention was the stack of letters in my bedside drawer. Fan mail, essentially, from people who'd followed the case and found inspiration in my resilience. Some had shared their own stories of betrayal and recovery. One woman had escaped an abusive relationship after recognizing the warning signs from my case. Those letters had planted a seed, one I wasn't quite ready to discuss yet. Perhaps my experience could help others navigate the treacherous waters of deception and rebuilding trust. Whatever you decide, Rachel said, I've got your back. I believed her. If there was any silver lining to the nightmare of the past year, it was discovering who my true friends were. After lunch, I had one more stop to make. The law offices of Harrison and Patel occupied the 23rd floor of a sleek midtown building. The receptionist recognized me immediately. Ms. Parker, Ms. Harrison is expecting you. Diane Harrison, the prosecutor who had masterfully constructed the case against James, welcomed me into her office with a firm handshake. I wanted to thank you personally, she said, gesturing for me to sit. Your testimony was compelling and crucial. Just doing my civic duty, I replied with a self-deprecating smile. It was more than that, and we both know it, Diane countered. You stood your ground despite vicious cross-examination and attempts to paint you as complicit. That took courage. She pushed a folder across her desk, which is why I wanted to discuss this with you directly. I opened the folder to find documents related to a civil asset forfeiture case. I don't understand. The properties and accounts seized from Mercer's operation, Diane explained. After restitution to the identified victims, there's a substantial remainder. As the key witness whose cooperation broke the case, you're entitled to a portion. I stared at the figure highlighted on the document. Nearly $2 million. I can't accept this, I said automatically. It's not a bribe or a reward, Diane clarified. It's restitution for the damage done to your life, career, and reputation. You were as much a victim as anyone. It feels wrong, I admitted. Profiting from this nightmare. Then don't think of it as profit, she suggested pragmatically. Think of it as a tool for rebuilding, or for helping others. I closed the folder, without committing. I'll think about it. That's all I ask, Diane said. The funds will be held in escrow until you decide. On the subway ride to my sister's house in Queens, I found myself contemplating possibilities that had seemed out of reach just hours earlier. With that kind of financial cushion, I could do more than just rebuild my own life. I could help others rebuild theirs. The idea that had been germinating took clearer shape. A foundation, perhaps. Resources for women recovering from financial and emotional abuse. Photography workshops as therapy. Using my hard-won expertise to illuminate the warning signs others might miss. Transforming victimhood into advocacy. My reverie was interrupted by a text message from an unknown number. Congratulations. On the verdict. We should talk. Maxwell. Still attempting to insinuate himself back into my life. I deleted the message without responding. Whatever his motives, genuine remorse, strategic networking, or something more manipulative, I had no interest in finding out. Some chapters needed to stay firmly closed. At Olivia's house, I was greeted with hugs, the chaotic energy of my niece and nephew, and the comforting aroma of Todd's lasagna. For a few hours, I allowed myself to simply exist in the warmth of family, without the weight of the past pressing down. Later, as we sat on the porch swing with glasses of wine, Olivia asked the question I'd been avoiding all day. Are you really okay, Maddie? Not just saying it? I considered my answer carefully. I'm getting there. Some days are better than others. And the nightmares? I shrugged. Less frequent. My therapist says that's progress. The nightmares had been the worst. In the immediate aftermath, vivid dreams of drowning in the lake, of James appearing in my bedroom, of discovering Maxwell and James were somehow the same person, morphing between identities as they tightened a noose around my neck. I worry about you, Olivia admitted, living alone, after everything. I'm tougher than I look, I reminded her. Always have been. She smiled, remembering our childhood battles, how I'd always stood up to bullies targeting my younger sister. True, but even tough people need support. That's what I have you for. I nudged her shoulder affectionately. As dusk settled around us, Fireflies began to appear in the garden, their gentle, intermittent glow a reminder that even in darkness, light finds a way. "I'm thinking of starting a foundation," I said abruptly. "For women who've been through similar situations, financial, support, legal resources, therapy programs." Olivia's eyes widened. "Maddie, that would be amazing. But the cost?" "There might be some money coming from the asset forfeitures," I explained, "and my photography is finally generating income again." "If anyone could make it work, it's you," she said with quiet confidence. Later that night, back in my small rented room, I opened my laptop and created a new document. At the top, I typed, "The Phoenix Project, Rising from the Ashes of Deception." Below, I began outlining my vision, a comprehensive support system for rebuilding lives shattered by betrayal, with practical resources for financial recovery, emotional healing, and eventual empowerment. As I worked into the early hours, I realized something profound. James had been right about one thing. I was a survivor. But he'd been wrong about what that meant. Surviving wasn't just about self-preservation at any cost. True survival meant emerging from the fire not just intact, but transformed. The next morning, I received an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read simply, "Important information regarding Maxwell Blackwood." My finger hovered over the delete button, assuming it was another of Maxwell's attempts to contact me. Curiosity won out. I opened it. The message was from a woman named Justine Woodward, claiming to be investigating Maxwell's activities for a financial crimes task force. Attached were documents suggesting his cooperation with the FBI was a facade, that he was still operating his schemes under new identities while providing just enough information about competitors to appear reformed. "I believe you're the only person who truly understands how he operates," she wrote. "Would you be willing to meet?" I stared at the screen, conflicting emotions washing over me. Part of me wanted to delete the email, to close the door on that chapter of my life permanently. Another part recognized the familiar pattern, Maxwell, eliminating rivals while protecting himself, just as he'd done with James. How many more women would fall victim while he remained free? I clicked reply and typed a single sentence. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Bryant Park, by the fountain." If Maxwell thought he could continue his predatory games unchecked, he had underestimated me. Again. I saved the email and attached documents, then forwarded copies to Agent Walker, Rachel, and my lawyer, insurance, in case this Justine Woodward wasn't who she claimed to be. Then I closed my laptop and went to my closet, where a small safe contained the one item I'd kept from my engagement to James. The recording device I'd found hidden in his office, identical to the one in Maxwell's watch. Both men had taught me the value of documentation, of evidence, of trust, but verify. Lessons I'd learned all too well. Whatever came next, whether genuine investigation or elaborate trap, I would be prepared. No longer the prey, no longer the pawn, but a player in my own right. A survivor, yes, but on my own terms. The future stretched before me, uncertain but filled with possibility. For the first time in years, I faced it without illusions, about others or about myself. The engagement party that had exposed so many lies had also, ironically, revealed the most important truth. I was stronger than anyone had given me credit for, especially myself. And that was something neither James nor Maxwell could ever take away. What would you do if the people closest to you turned out to be architects of your destruction? In Madison's place, would you break or become someone new? If this story of survival and revenge kept you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button and subscribe for more intense tales of betrayal and justice. New stories every Tuesday. Turn on notifications so you never miss what happens next.